Happy New Year everybody, it's the 1st of January. My last video I used the Vango F10 Helium UL1 tent, and as you probably saw, quite a lot of people asked me questions on it and wanted to know a bit more about it because I hadn't done a proper review. So I've got it back out, we'll get this thing pitched up and I'll just talk you through some of the better features on it and some of the things I didn't like. First of all, one of the things I do like about it is the size and weight. As you can see with this 12-inch ruler, it's not an awful lot bigger. And it's also quite slim. That's not even been cinched down as far as it can go. And it's also about 1.2 kilos. The other thing I like about it is it's one of the side entry bags, which just means that when your tent is wet, you just get so much, it's just much easier to fire the tent back in. So it comes with 2 end poles and a main arc pole. They're all, let me just check for you, Yunnan quality, Yunnan brand I should say. So it's quite good. They seem quite slim, but actually when the tent was pitched I was a wee bit concerned it was a bit thin in terms of section, but the tent seems quite stable in reality. You also get a repair kit with the normal patches, bits and pieces. You also get a pole tube as well, pole tube repair. So that's good, and it came with, I think it should be 12 pegs actually. I only used 10 in that trip, but there was 2 missing from the main hoops at the bottom, so you need 12 pegs, and I think it does come with 12. You've also got a wee peg bag, pole bag, and then the inner itself is attached to the outer, so it's a pitches 1, which is a great boon in UK and European conditions where it's very damp or rainy. The end poles fit into sleeves at either end and then into a clip at the bottom, as you can see here. I think they can remain captive, which would be much better. It's a wee bit of a faff to have to put them in every time, but I think you can actually just leave them in place. So you just take the pole, pop it into a wee sleeve here, pull that hood over and then pull the eyelet down. And I don't know if you can see this, but I'll show it in just a second. It's very tight. There you are, it just pops into there. The main pole just goes into a sleeve, continuous sleeve with a gap at either end, and then it just fits into an eyelet at either end. So one of the slight disadvantages of this design is you've got to pop the pole into an eyelet at both ends. If this had been a captive sleeve with just a reinforced end, you could have slid the pole in and popped in one end only and it'd be quicker to pitch. And you can just tension the main hoop by pulling on this strap, buckle, and then peg out the corners. Again, one of the wee things that annoyed me was the inner is not attached to the outer at these corner points. I don't know whether that's an oversight or whether you could just elastic tie them to the same loop, but it seems crazy to have to do this twice. If they were pre-tied, then you just peg and go, much easier. The elastic is separate, don't know why, just tie it off to that I would say, and it's done, and then you're just pegging it one thing each time. And then the final pegs are just to peg out the main hoop, and the same at the other side. The pegs are okay, they're not the best in the world. They're quite good in soft ground, they're very finger friendly, but I notice from previous experience that they tend to bend in very hard rocky ground. And then finally just go around the whole tent and tension up the line lock adjusters just to get it tensioned up correctly. My criticisms would be tie off the corners to the main pegging points so they're pre-done, and also if they were redesigning it, is go for a continuous pole sleeve here. It's got the usual rain flap on the main zip with the velcro. It's also got a plastic catch at the bottom to stop zip creep in high winds, which is quite a nice wee design. The only thing I'd say about this rain flap is it's too thin. It could do with a stiffener, it tends to catch the zip, so you have to be careful when you're undoing this. And then it has a single tie back on the door here. which I'd like to have seen to be black elastic. It just makes it a wee bit more positive and won't undo in the wind. So small details like that could be improved, and it would cost nothing more and add no more weight. So as you can see, the vestibule area is actually quite narrow. I'd be a wee bit nervous about cooking in it, but it has one wee trick up its sleeve to help you. So in the middle of the ground sheet, there's a toggle and ring system which you can release, and it pulls back the inner, so you can then just move that out of the way so you can safely cook. The inner tent is mostly solid polyester fabric, which is good for winter use. So you've only got this kind of 1/4 area of mesh here in the main door, which is not too breezy when the weather gets really cold. And I'll show you there's a couple of little end vents as well. The main door on the inner is a kind of semicircular one, so it doesn't tend to fall in the dirt too badly. You just unzip it right round, roll it up, and again there's a single toggle on the left hand side here. And looking at either end, you'll see this small vent that matches the vent on the outside. That cannot be closed, but I did use that in sub-zero temperatures in a fairly steady northerly wind the other night, and I can't say I noticed any breeze. In fact, to be honest, it was probably more prone to condensation in here because it is so well enclosed. And you've got the same at the opposite side. So I'm 5'8" and I can just sit up in the middle of the tent with my head just touching the inner. It's just enough room for me. I think as a taller user you'd really struggle with this. I think you would probably want to look at some other models. And up here in the roof there are two elasticated mesh pockets made out of the no-seam mesh, one on either side of the ridgeline. And you'll also see the TBS system buckles, which really strengthens up the tent if you attach these. I'll show you this with the cord running through the inner in just a second. The TBS cord comes up from the bottom of the pole outside, and then there's a velcro patch here on the inner, and the line runs straight through and connects to the buckle. And then you can just tension it up. You don't want to distort the main pole, and you do that on both sides, and that just, it's almost like extra guy lines on the outside of the tent, except they're internal. So that's a regular size Neo Air X-Therm in place with the feet virtually at the end, and you can see there's probably about 6 or 8 inches above your head just up there. In practice with my feet at the bottom I found it okay, it wasn't too claustrophobic around my head, but again I think if you're about 6 foot plus you might find this a bit tight. So with a Rab Ascent 700 in place, again, headroom if your feet are at the bottom, okay, not really a problem. You can see, again, spinning round to the feet though, you've got a tendency to touch the inner. I don't think you'd necessarily touch the fly sheet, unless it's very windy, because it's a single pole. It is a wee bit more flappy than single hoop designs that have double poles at either end. So that's something you might want to take into consideration. Also should mention that it's a silicone nylon fly sheet on the outside and polyester I believe on the inside, which is why they're able to tape all the seams. So in terms of water ingress, it's got quite a good hydrostatic head, though I wouldn't get too hung up on that. I've never had a problem with a hydrostatic head in any of the tents I've had. It's more likely that it's going to leak at the seams or the stress points. In wet weather the inner is detachable, so you can unclip the inner in the morning, pack it away separately and try and keep it dry separate from the rest of the tent, or indeed just give yourself more space, pop this out, and in the summer you could use it as a single skin tent and give yourself probably enough room to possibly sleep too. It's also worth mentioning it's got a useful little bit of extra width at the back, so the ground sheet is not rectangular. You've obviously goes out to the hoop in the middle, so you've got about an extra 1.5 feet just for storing some gear. You could probably even get a pack in there if you really wanted to. Another good feature, which you don't see in a lot of tents, is it's a two-way zip. So if you're cooking, you can vent the door and let the steam out and the moisture out. So there you go, the Force 10 Helium UL1 solo tent. I really like it actually. I think it's an excellent tent and great value for money. It's a nice bit of kit, mostly very well designed and thought out for serious use and for relatively rough weather. Relatively warm as well, and it's just got a few wee niggles which I've outlined in the video, which could easily be altered for the future, and you can modify it to some extent yourself. So yeah, as a mid kind of market, relatively inexpensive tent compared to say a Hilleberg Acto, I think it's a very solid choice for people probably about 6 foot or under. If you have any questions, just drop me a line below and I'll try and answer them for you, and thanks to my brother Richard for lending me the tent to try. But yeah, I think it comes well recommended, and I don't think you go far wrong with it. That's if you can find one, because they seem to be relatively rare on the ground. Anyway, thank you for watching. Happy New Year everybody, and see you for the next one.